Good afternoon. My name is Jim, and today we're going to talk about the IEP process and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act and the different categories. There's 13 of them that can fall within the IEP guidelines. So let's begin by just talking about several different issues with IEPs. Let's talk about parent or guardian and student involvement. We'll talk about the referral process. We'll talk about evaluations. We'll talk about eligibility. And then we'll talk about the different components of the IEP. So let's begin today by talking about the IEP process and what that referral looks like. So typically a parent or a school official is going to notice that the student has some barriers to learning. And if those barriers are severe enough and can't be overcome by a little extra help in the classroom, then it's probably going to be a referral. So the referral is 3 steps. The first step is recognition, understanding that there's an issue, understanding that there might be a problem. Maybe a parent brought it to the school's attention, maybe the school brought it to the parent's attention. A lot of times it's both kind of collaborating, seeing that there's an issue and that student needs some help. There's a pre-referral process, and that is where the student is evaluated, not in depth, but just cursory. Everyone's spoken to see if do we need to move forward with an IEP, or do we need to maybe put some other services in before we go that route to see if that helps. If it's determined that there's a referral needed, then the official referral is sent through to the district. The district then has 60 days to set up an evaluation to see if the student needs an IEP or falls under one of those 13 categories. If it's determined that the student falls under one of those 13 categories, then the student will have an IEP meeting and an IEP plan will be set up. The way that IEP plan works is there will be goals and objectives built into the plan, and there will be mechanisms for monitoring that, and there will be resources and supports put in place to help the special ed teacher or the general ed teacher or the community partners or the in-house school district professionals such as occupational therapists, speech therapists, psychologists, etc., to provide a well-rounded plan for that child. Once that has been determined that that is going to go forward, then all parties would meet and would have an agenda. Facilitate an IEP meeting would occur with very clear guidelines, very clear rules, and everyone's voice would be heard and respected. And the plan would come out to help that child overcome those barriers. Then every quarter, the teachers would do a report, the school administrators would do a report, the report would go to the parent, and that's going to be an update on how that student is doing. If adjustments need to be made at that time, then a conversation can be had about changes to help that student. If it's determined that the student is progressing well and we're going to keep on that same path, then every year, minimally once a year, the law requires that the IEP meeting happen again and that the review occurs. And during that review, the team is going to look at goals, the team is going to look at progress made, the team is going to look at that child and see where they are. Do they still need services? Do they need the services adjusted? Or is everything going really well with the supports in place, and keep trudging forward that way? So it's a reevaluation of everything. Very important that the district takes the parents' input into account and that the district takes all the professionals' input into an account and decide what would be the best approach for that student moving forward. So the components of the IEP, there's several of them. The current level that the student is at would be the first component. Where does the student fit in at with their current learning? Are they behind grade level? Are they at grade level? What does that look like? So there's goals that are going to be put into place for that student. Determines, because it's an individual plan, the plan is going to be different for every student. But each student will have very clearly defined goals and objectives, and those will be shared with everybody on the team so that that student can receive the most support possible to overcome those barriers to learning. There is a special education component. There's also a general education component. There is, within the law, it states that students should be in the least restrictive environment. And that means that they should only be in the special ed classroom or special ed programming as little as needed, and they should be with their peers a majority of the time. So the special ed teacher and the general ed teacher are going to come up with a plan so that they're following those guidelines and giving the child a more well-rounded education. In addition, any accommodations that the student needs will be in that plan, as well as any professional inside the district or outside the district assistance. When the student's in the mainstream classroom, there may be special things that they need in supports, maybe extra staff, maybe different lessons. That'll all be detailed in the IEP. That's how that process would work. And so to back up a little bit, if the IEP is determined not to be needed for that student, but that they were brought up as a focus of concern, and that a parent or a school district felt that there at least needed to be a pre-referral, there's a good chance that that student will be monitored more closely, and if things don't improve, they could move into an IEP referral situation. So it's good to note that the IEP process is more fluid, where it can go more restrictive, less restrictive, more services, less services, and that can change as the student progresses through the process. Or if the student needs extra supports, that can be added as well. I think it's just really important to know that parents, you're a vital part of this process, and that what you observe with your student and how you feel about the process is very important, and that your voice should be heard by the district, and that what you have to say should be taken into account when a plan is put together. It should be a collaboration of all parties and not just a quick meeting. It should be a collaboration, it should be well organized, and that everyone's voice should be heard. And the ultimate goal is for that student to receive services to overcome those barriers and become a better student. So thank you for listening. Again, my name is Jim, and I appreciate your time today talking about the IEP process.